Okay, so back in 1995, a suburb of Tokyo was hit by a crime that, to this day, is one of Japan's most haunting, unsolved cases. It's a story that's all about brutal efficiency, clues that just don't add up, and a decades-long search for a ghost that has literally crossed continents. So, the date is July 30th. We're in a quiet Tokyo suburb called Hachioji. It's closing time at the local supermarket, and inside are three women, a part-time manager, and two high school students just working their shifts. Within just a few minutes of the store closing, all three of them were dead. They were killed with this chilling executioner's precision in an attack that has just completely stumped police for decades. The whole thing, from the moment the killer confronted them to the very last shot, it probably took less than 3 minutes. To really get what makes this mystery so compelling, we have to go back to the Nanpai supermarket. And this place, well, it was known around the neighborhood for one really critical flaw. Its security was, to put it mildly, pretty lax. The security log from that night tells a really chilling story. At 9:15 p.m., the manager makes a call. Just 1 minute later, the system shows the office door being locked and then immediately unlocked. So what's the theory? That the victims locked up, stepped outside, and were immediately forced right back in by a gunman who was just lying in wait. And a minute after that, witnesses heard some pops, sounds they just thought were fireworks from a festival happening nearby. The crime scene itself was just a total contradiction. The two students were bound with tape, shot once. The manager, though, wasn't tied up, but she was beaten and shot twice, and a fifth bullet was fired right at the safe. Yet over 5 million yen in cash was sitting right there, completely untouched. It had all the makings of a robbery, but the killer took nothing. And that contradiction, right there, created two competing theories that have been pulling investigators in completely different directions ever since. Was this a simple robbery that went horribly wrong, or was it something way more personal, way more sinister? So let's break this down. The robbery theory makes some sense. The store was an easy target, and tying up victims a classic move. But then you have the grudge theory. Why leave all that cash behind? The killings were so methodical, not panicked. And here's the kicker. The manager had actually gotten a death threat before, a note with a razor blade inside that said, "Your life is in danger." So which is it? A robbery or a targeted hit made to look like one? Now, let's talk about the search for the killer. It's been this decades-long journey, just filled with these tantalizing clues that seemed like they were about to crack the case wide open, only to just dissolve into these frustrating dead ends. The first huge break seemed to come from the killer himself. Investigators, using some really advanced techniques, were able to lift a partial fingerprint from the sticky side of the duct tape. The tape used to tie up the victims. This felt like it. This had to be the smoking gun. But it turned out to be an almost impossible coincidence. The print was an 8-point match to a man who had died about a decade before they even found the print. The odds of that happening are 1 in 100 million. But for it to be legal proof in a Japanese court, you need a 12-point match. And to make it even more confusing, the guy had a solid alibi for the night of the murders, and DNA from his relatives didn't match any DNA from the scene. It was a complete ghost in the machine that led absolutely nowhere. So years go by, and then this incredible tip comes from the most unlikely source you can imagine: a Japanese gang leader sitting on death row in a Chinese prison for drug trafficking. He said he had information about the Hachioji killer. This tip sparked this massive international effort. The inmate named a former accomplice. Police tracked that guy down to Canada. After this years-long process, they finally get him extradited back to Japan on a really minor charge, just hoping he'll crack under pressure. He didn't. He served his time, said nothing, and was deported. That whole lead spanning 3 different countries, another dead end. So with all the human leads totally exhausted, investigators had to turn back to the only thing they had left: the physical evidence. And just like everything else in this case, the murder weapon told this baffling, contradictory story. To really get this next part, you need to know about Senjo-kan, which is basically ballistic fingerprinting. The idea is that every bullet fired from a gun carries a unique set of scratches from the barrel. It's like a calling card, traceable back to the one and only gun that could have fired it. And right here is the puzzle of the weapon.
Ballistics identified it as this cheap Philippine-made revolver, a model that's known for being unreliable and really inaccurate. And yet, the killer's shots? Incredibly precise. So how could a highly skilled marksman be so deadly with such a piece of junk? A new lead did pop up in 2009 when police seized a gun with extremely similar ballistics from a gangster, but they could never make a definitive link. The gun's story is still a total mystery.
So beyond the twisting mystery and all the dead ends, this case left a really deep and lasting scar on Japanese society. It fundamentally changed the way people thought about safety in their own neighborhoods. In fact, the Japanese National Police Agency itself called this case a turning point. Before this happened, gun violence was largely seen as something that was confined to the criminal underworld, the Yakuza. This case brought that brutal reality right into a suburban supermarket, targeting ordinary citizens, and two of them were just teenagers.
The crime actually inspired a generation of activism. One of the victims' high school started an anti-gun violence group that's still active today. And while there's still a public reward for information out there, the physical location of the tragedy itself has been completely erased. The Nanpei supermarket was torn down years ago. Today it's just a parking lot.
Now, because Japan abolished the statute of limitations for murder, this investigation is still officially open. So it's a question that the victims' families, and really an entire nation, have been asking for almost 3 decades, as the search for justice for 3 innocent women just continues.